Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Friday. Thought I would want to get the short range stuff out of the way because this event for Saturday looks pretty minor and get into the long range, which actually looks pretty interesting and maybe potentially exciting for winter weather lovers and snow lovers down the road. First off, we've got this cold front that's moved on through, and you can see it right here outlined in where I just drew the black line. That's where the front is during the late morning on this Friday, and we've got northerly winds bringing down colder air. The actual core of the cold air is much further to the west, and when you see the temperatures are down in the teens and single digits, all of this is moving pretty much to the east. So we're going to see this chill down from the record highs of yesterday, and we actually have a little bit of precipitation here in the form of some snow, sleet, and rain across parts of central Missouri into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, northern Kentucky. Most of it is light, but there are a few little patches of heavier precip here. And this is all going to head to the east as this little wave develops. But just to show you on the NAM model today, it really doesn't do very much with it at all. It's backed off. There's a little chunk of precip there that gets into New Jersey during tomorrow afternoon, and then it just kind of translates east and falls apart as the wave develops out offshore and moves away to the east. I don't know if we have enough of the GFS model to use as a comparison. Actually, we do, so we can take a look at that. And the GFS model does the same idea, and you can see it here. And it moves on out. So the fact that the system is not really very strong and at all, it's very weak. Precipitation to me looks to be on the light side. I've been thinking on the order of maybe a coating to an inch or so in some places from south of New York City down through parts of New Jersey into southeastern Pennsylvania, and that's it. This is not going to get into anybody's way, and it's no big deal. But let's look at the long range, because I think what's happening is we're going to undergo a pattern upheaval, in a sense. At least this is what the models have been telegraphing for the last several days. So I think it's a process that's going to take about 2 weeks to play out. It's going to be another long grinding process. So how it finishes remains to be seen. But it looks like it wants to go in this direction. So let's take a look. First of all, we know that all the action has been in the west. And as we go through the weekend and into next week, you can see how the pattern evolves. So it kind of looks pretty much with the same idea that we've been experiencing. We've got generally a ridge in the east. There's troughing that's out in the west. And you've got these weather systems that are sort of moving along. The flow remains across the Pacific. Canada is essentially cut off. The cold air stays up to the north. So there's really nothing new here as we go through the middle of next week. And it would certainly suggest that temperatures are going to be on the mild side of normal in the eastern part of the United States. Now, the model drives another deep trough into the west as we move into next weekend. But one of the big differences that's occurring here is that if you notice all of this area here up in the northwestern Atlantic and in through eastern Canada, over Greenland, over this very large area, you have higher than normal pressures that are building here very, very strongly. And at the same time, you've got, in response to that, a very deep trough in the west. So you have lower than normal pressures and heights in the west. So at this point, as we go into next weekend, nothing has really radically changed in terms of the overall flow, and that you still have everything basically coming from the Pacific. Canada still cut off. The flow from Canada still basically cut off. But what happens after this, because the ridging is so powerful across the northern part of Canada up in the polar regions, is that gradually what we see is an evolution to something different. A few new things appear as we go into the last week of January. We see a ridge that develops in the western states. You see troughing that develops in the east, and you see a gradual reestablishment of the polar flow coming southward into the United States. And I think the most important part of this is that warming that goes on in the atmosphere pretty much dominates the areas well to the north in the poles. And what this is telling us is that cold air is going to be displaced southward, further south than normal. You see where all the blue area is here, how far south it gets. So at least aloft, it's suggesting a strengthening of the jet stream in the southern sphere. And as we move over time, what winds up happening is that the trough in the west is gone. You have a ridge now in the western states. You have a vortex that forms in Canada and funnels down cold air into the east. And you've got these weather systems that continue to move along in the Pacific flow. Now, this suggests to me that the pattern going into the very end of January and the beginning of February is going to be different from what we've seen overall during the last number of weeks. The question in my mind, and this I think is going to be the big question, is whether this is temporary. Does it last for just a few days or a week or so, and then everything starts to pull out, and you get a reestablishment of the trough in the west? We kind of saw that happen toward the end of the year and the beginning of January. Or is this going to be something that's going to hold for a while? Now, there's a number of suggestions. There are a number of suggestions and ideas in some of the other levels of the atmosphere that this might be something that holds for a while. So if this is the case, it would mean for a colder and possibly stormier look to the weather going into February in the eastern U.S. and a calmer regime for the most part going into the west. And by the way, this big storm that affected California with major snows of up to 10 feet in the Sierra Nevadas and on northward, and also all the heavy rains that they got. I did see a report yesterday that this system did a major drought denting for them in their long-term 5-year plus drought. That this has really been huge for that part of the country. So that's good news. Now, I just want to show you how this translates in terms of temperatures. These are above normal and below normal temperatures. And most of next week is the thaw week, as we've established. And then you start to see this gradual expansion of colder than normal temperatures. If you remember back during December and some of the cold blasts, a couple of the volatile cold blasts that we had that came in for short periods and then pulled out, we saw the same idea. But all of Canada now, if this is correct, all of Canada is below normal. Okay. And that is different. And, again, this is all that cold air getting displaced southward. And then you can see that warm air that's up near the polar regions where it's all pretty much above normal, especially over Greenland. And that would suggest higher than normal pressures there. So there's every bit of evidence to suggest that we're going to go into a new scheme of things as we move forward. By the way, I am trying to find some websites and forecasters in the West that provide West Coast analysis that is far beyond my scope because, as I said yesterday, I don't live out in the West. I live in the East, and, I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to the western part of the United States except in how it relates to the East. So as soon as I get that information, I'll post it up. And if you want anything specific, just shoot me an email at my email address is somewhere on the YouTube page, or just post a message on the comments board, and I'll try and get back to you. So here's the wider view, and you can see a low tries to come out of the southwest. Some snows back through Colorado and Nebraska here for the eastern states as we go into next week. That's just a weak low that goes northward. We get into some showers around midweek. Another system comes into the west and that's with that deep trough, that next deep trough in the west brings in some heavy rains and snows there. And, this is what happens there is very important to what's going to happen here in the east. And this also looks like it could be another major event for them. But it's from that system that you wind up with the catalyst to make the pattern change occur in the eastern part of the United States. And you can see how it gradually turns colder over time. I would again emphasize the fact that when you look at these models in the longer range in terms of the broader scale. It's a different way to look at it as opposed to looking at it when it tries to print out a specific surface map that goes with it, because we know that the specifics are going to change quite a bit. So I wouldn't focus on the fact that it shows storms in the east. I wouldn't focus on the fact that it doesn't show storms in the east. I think the main focus it should be that we're seeing this wholesale change being telegraphed. And the European model, which does not go out far enough for our purposes here that we can see, although I did see some of the longer range suggesting also the same idea. The European model is pretty much in the same ball game through the 10th day. We'll roll it back and you can see how that big ridge just develops like crazy in the eastern part of Canada and starts to move up toward the polar region. So you have the same view on the European really as you do on the GFS, with this next trough in the west, but this big monumental ridge that starts to build up in eastern Canada is going to eventually create that polar flow again that comes down from Canada into the east. And I would also think that the strength of the Pacific jet being as dominant as it is will keep sending weather systems along. So I think there's going to be chances for some wintertime weather here as we get to the very end of January and the beginning of February. So in the meantime, just enjoy the week of relative relaxation weather-wise that's going to be coming up for next week. And this weekend's weather system, the Saturday weather system, again, looks very, very minor. So have a great day, and check out I have a more detailed post on my website on meteorologistjoechaffe.com. Just click on the link that's on the card that shows up here on the video. And of course, you can download my weather app and subscribe to my forecast for just $1 a month, which is cheaper than a cup of coffee or coffee, depending on what part of the country and what accent you want me to use. But that's for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Hudson Valley, and Eastern Pennsylvania. Have a great Friday, and we will be posting away as we always are.